So there's a new article by Brad Glasgow about Gamergate, which is kind of funny because we haven't really had much conversation about Gamergate. It just comes up now and then as a reference in some random article about driving women out of gaming, which, we'll just get right out of the way. In the beginning, I think that's ridiculous. A huge simplification of a very complicated issue. Imagine that. So Brad Glasgow came out with an article pointing out that Gamergate is largely comprised of liberals and the left, and that only a small percentage of Gamergate, at least when he did his survey, is conservative or right wing. So that's interesting, and I would say maybe it reflects sort of a new politics of a different generation or a different era, the era of online interaction. And I would also say that it's not really extremely important whether Gamergate is right wing or left wing. I think it's interesting and more interesting that it's comprised of people from across the political spectrum who all have similar goals and beliefs, but also disagree in big ways. And you see some of that disagreement come out in the subreddit Kotaku in Action, which I tweeted about as being a community that's moved to the right from probably when Brad did his survey. And you see quite a lot of Donald Trump support, for instance, on that subreddit and within Gamergate. And that's interesting too, because I think that a lot of the support for Trump is because he is sort of the anti-SJW, the anti-scold. He's a lot of things, and I'm not a fan. I'll get that right out of the way. But he is also the kind of person who doesn't, bend to political correctness. And I can see why that is a quality that Gamergate and that many others admire in him. Certainly, I think that lots of the Kotaku in Action and more right-leaning Gamergate supporters have moved that direction thanks to the hard work of Milo over at Breitbart, who has really come into his own as a political agitator and has done a pretty good job of wooing a number of gamers to the right, which I think is interesting. I've heard a lot on Twitter of people who said, well, the left attacked us, and so I moved to the right. And I think that's sort of strange. Like, your beliefs about politics have nothing to do with the people who are attacking you over gaming. Like, if you believe in the government having a larger role in society, and you believe in progressive redistribution of wealth or national health care, these sorts of things, who cares what some game writer says about you? If you believe in those things, you believe in those things, and if you don't, then you don't. You should have some belief, though. Anyways, so Gamergate, yeah, it's more of a complicated political spectrum than people give it credit for. I do think that overall, I would say that gamers come from all walks of life, and that's totally great. And I think sometimes when I get on this topic, people think I'm criticizing because I say maybe such and such is more right wing. I don't care if you're right wing. I have a lot of conservative friends. People describe me as a moderate, but I don't think that's exactly accurate. I describe myself as an eccentric, a political eccentric, because I have eclectic beliefs. I have a wide array of beliefs that don't fit nicely into any political party or tribe or movement, and I think that's something I've wrestled with a lot, because I'm often called a moderate or a fence sitter or something like that, and I don't really think that's true. I think that you're allowed to have your own beliefs and fit into your own system of beliefs without having to be part of something else. And we as human beings, we like to label things. We like to give names to things and be part of things, be part of movements, be part of causes. I think a big part of Gamergate for a lot of people was finding a community to be a part of and being part of a cause that was bigger than themselves. I think a big part of what we see with the trend of SJW scolds, outrage warriors, whatever you want to call these people, is that they are also finding community and finding meaning and purpose. And for a lot of people, I would say for most people, it's all well intentioned. People want to do good. They want to make the world a better place. And sometimes that can turn into bullying or harassment or just judgment. And I'm not a very religious person, but I do believe firmly in the judge not lest they be judged, and other, sort of maybe antiquated ideas like turn the other cheek. And I think that in the internet age, it's very easy to just judge and judge and judge, and we judge people based on some post they've written or on a tweet they've made, and we confine them to our set of beliefs, define them by those, and then can treat them as less than human. Whether that's a gamer, because we have a set idea of what gamers are, or whether that's someone who cracks a joke that's a little off color, whether that's someone who, is just espousing a belief that's different from ours. So, my goal, I would never be a very good political agitator, because my goal has been and probably always will be one of trying to mend bridges. And that sometimes that you have to go on the attack. Sometimes you have to criticize, because some things need to be said. But I think overall, I really do believe in the goodness of people, and in the idea that we, you look at gaming, and you look at these different subreddits and communities and NeoGAF and Kotaku in Action and 4chan and all these places, there's bad apples in every one of those, and there's huge, wide divides of differences. But I think one thing that I like writing about games and being part of games is that games are one of those universal things that can bring us together. I think that's also why sometimes people bristle when people talk about games so negatively. Games are sexist, games are too violent. I mean, games are a lot of things, and sometimes they are objectifying, and sometimes they are a little over the top with the violence. But the fact is if you break it all down and you peel back the layers, you're engaging in this activity with all these people, these randoms that you don't even know a lot of the time. And it's bringing people together, and it's putting everybody on an even footing. And what I don't like about all the scolding and the fear mongering that I see is that I regularly read about such and such woman girl wanted to get into game design or game journalism, but then heard about how hostile the environment was towards women, and they decided not to. And I think that's terrible, because yes, that does happen, but there are still many women in the industry, and I think there should be more. And I don't think people just want women out of. I think there are very few people. There's not some giant community of people who wants women out of games. Some of the most popular people to Gamergate are female writers, and YouTube personalities and whatnot. So that's just preposterous to me. And I don't like seeing the results of that fear-mongering, be people getting chased out of even thinking about getting into this industry. Or, that awful Law & Order SVU episode where the female game developer, quits at the end and says that they won and all this. It's nonsense. So anyways, I'm rambling a little bit. I wanted to also talk about Trump and Hillary and how that sort of affects all of this. I think the election is playing a big part in why I've seen places like Kotaku in Action move to the right, and I think that's partly because Hillary is just a really unappealing choice to so many people. She's not really. I think that she's going to pander a little to that SJW crowd, but Hillary is a moderate Democrat. She's one of the, she's a Clinton Democrat. The problem with Hillary, from my point of view, is that she's a hawk. She's trigger happy. She's she's right there with George W. Bush and the neocons. She's just a slightly more progressive version of that whole segment of politicians. They don't really care about rights to privacy. They don't care about the outcomes of our foreign involvement overseas, in the Middle East and elsewhere. I don't think that she'd be as reckless as the Bush administration, but I do think she will not be even as contained as Obama, who I also thought was too aggressive overseas, and one of the reasons that I really liked Ron Paul, and to a lesser degree Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was better on foreign policy, but not perfect. Trump had the opportunity to be less of a blowhard on foreign policy, especially when he called out the Bush administration for Iraq. But he's said so many things about nukes and other terrible foreign policy ideas that he's absolutely no better than Hillary. So we're left basically with the two major parties both offering up really bad choices on foreign policy. Trump's bad on immigration. I'm a freedom lover. I like freedom. I like the idea of smaller government at home and overseas. I like the idea of more immigration, more trade, more peace. I'm a realist, so I realize that smaller government doesn't always work and can't always be implemented properly. So, I'm not like one of those guys who's like, let's cut taxes and then close down all the schools. Like we need to take care of the basic domestic services that we have as a society already agreed to. But there's a lot of ways we can diminish government, and especially the violence of government, ending the war on drugs, cutting down our prison population, having better limits on police, much lower spending on war, and then we can start talking about the non-violent ways our government is bloated. I say one thing at a time, but for something like that, Gary Johnson and the Libertarian Party is very appealing. I know third party is still a waste of a vote, because the third parties really need, before a third party can be a viable option in an election, they need to get behind someone and get behind a platform to build up their party before the election, and that never happens. It's always like, well, now here's the election, and now, oh look, there's a libertarian candidate. Nobody even knows who the fuck libertarians are. I don't like the Green. I've never liked the Green Party. Jill Stein is not appealing to me. So right now, of the four, the two third party candidates that are of any consequence, and the two main candidates, I definitely think Gary Johnson is the best choice in terms of just a more peaceful world. He even stopped smoking pot to run for president, which I think is hilarious. But also a good sign, because we shouldn't have people going to jail for smoking pot. Anyways, I don't understand freedom lovers who back Trump. He's not a freedom lover. He's a petty tyrant. He's an arrogant, self-centered asshole, basically, and he doesn't represent freedom in any way. And for all the conservatives who have told me, you need to support freedom. Well, if you support freedom, I don't know how you can support Trump. I don't know how you can support either of the two parties right now, because neither one of them gives a shit about freedom, or liberty, or justice for all. None of that. None of that old, antiquated American idealism. But whatever, support whoever you like. I don't care. I don't judge people based on that, unless they're supporting, truly abhorrent things. And I don't think Trump means half the things he says. So, that's it for me. This is just a rant. Let's rant. Let's rant about Gamergate and politics and the state of the union, state of God, and all that shit. I'm gonna go play the Neo demo now, because that looks rad. And I tried to download it yesterday, and it crapped out on me. So I think it worked. I gotta go check that. So more on Neo soon. Also playing Deus Ex, and it's okay. I'm kind of mixed still. kind of annoyed with it, honestly, but more on that. And then Titanfall 2 this weekend. Really, I had fun with it, but the more I think about it, the more disappointed with it I am, and especially reading some of the developer commentary on the game. So I'm gonna write about that a little bit more, because it's like the classic example of a developer just totally ignoring their fans and their biggest fans, no less, and just going with a bizarre direction. I mean, like, it's mind blowing. So, lots of stuff to talk about with games. Peace, love, namaste. I am not a crook.